Hello, welcome to Get Real with Religion. Today I have my dad and I'm filming from New Delhi, so he's the guest appearance. It's going to be a fun episode, and I will also talk about why I didn't upload my episode 2 weeks ago. So what happened was I was going to film it and I was going to do a series of short stories from Hindu mythology and how you can connect it to today's time. But then something ended up happening. So after there was a claim made by one of the politicians that he is God sent during the Indian elections, I ended up putting up a social media post saying that Hinduism that puts people on the same stature as God and kind of prays to them like they would pray to a deity is not real Hinduism. And that triggered a lot of people because India recently has had a rise in Godmen, in people, and not recently, I mean it's been 2-3 decades at least, right?
So Godmen have always been an important feature of the Indian landscape.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so after that, and then what ended up happening was there was a lot of backlash from this one person saying that it was that people who pray to these godmen, self-styled godmen, don't have bad intentions, which I seem to agree with. But I think the problem is the godmen themselves have bad intentions more often than not, and they've really used religion as a tool to make money, and and to do other things, to exploit people. We've had many examples in India of that, especially Ashram Bapu was one who's currently behind bars as well, I think, for sexually exploiting a series of women, and so is now Ram Rahim, who had his name was longer than Ram Rahim, but I could not bother, who for the same charges. So it really has become kind of a business rather than being a teacher, because they portray themselves as gurus, which translates to teachers, but they also expect people to pray to them, which is a little bit off, because it's one thing to be a teacher. I approve of that. I mean, in Sikhism we had 10 gurus and so on and so forth, but to equate them to God is another thing. In temples now, we have the biggest photograph of the godman that you pray to, and then the tiniest kind of statue deities, which is just unfair. So I don't know what the psychology behind this is. That's why he's here, so he's going to probably help us understand that a little bit more.
So I am not a trained psychologist, but I have sort of thought a lot about religion and how people become religious and why they stay religious.
He is a doctor though. For anyone who doesn't know, he's an MBBS.
Yes, and whatever psychology came my way, I sort of gobbled it up then and later. So I think like in business, you have ethical businessmen, you have Ponzi scheme people who kind of defraud poor people of their earnings, or gullible people. I think gullible people are vulnerable in every sphere of life. It's not just the economic sphere, it's also the spiritual sphere. And I wouldn't characterize all godmen or all godwomen, I mean it's across the board, as fundamentally dishonest, out to defraud people. But there is room for people to exploit gullibility everywhere. So it's not just in the religious space, but also in the secular space. And sometimes the two combine, because religion is big business as well.
And I think it's easier to exploit people who are actively seeking out religion, because I wouldn't say religion who are actively seeking out support in religion, because that means they're already vulnerable to begin with. They might have experienced a life event. A lot of these people are widows, are orphaned children, are people who are having financial issues, are having emotional issues, relationship issues, employment issues. So they kind of, it starts off with vulnerability. So people who are inherently secure in life, or inherently understand their religion enough to know that there is one larger entity, and you pray to that entity in literally every religion. Even in Hinduism, it's said that there's one larger God, and then all of them are derived from it. Same with Sikhs, or with Christians, or with Islam, everything. People who understand their religion, fine, but there are people who would go to any extent to get what they want, and they'll also believe in a person. It's just very interesting.
Yes, it is. In fact, like you said, being vulnerable is, according to me, just one half of it. The other half of it is that a lot of these people are so hard up in life, they've been treated unfairly by the system, by their life circumstances, that they're also willing to suspend disbelief.
Yeah.
And when you suspend disbelief, you are not skeptical anymore. And that is, in some sense, it is reinforced by traditional religious teaching also, because a lot of religions do say that, look at the water you're stepping into, or critically examine what's being offered to you. But when disbelief is suspended, people may become ready to believe anything.
Yeah.
And that may bring them under the influence of fraudulent people.
And it's very interesting because older people, especially in South Asia, in fact everywhere in the world, claim to have a lot more wisdom, a lot more experience. But a lot of these people who go to these godmen or godwomen are in the older generation. They don't realize the gullibility. Even the people that are behind bars now, they weren't small names, they were huge names. There are people now with them behind bars that still pray to them.
So a lot of religion has always been about narratives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of these narratives are accepted by the faithful as true, and it's part of the narrative for a fallen godman or a godwoman to say, look, the times are so bad that even people of God are treated like this.
Yeah.
So the narrative can also always be turned to their advantage.
Which it is. And I do want to, because originally the episode was supposed to be about connecting myth to today's world, and what the parallels that we can draw. So I'm going to take a minute to actually draw a parallel here. When Asaram Bapu's trial was going on, there were very few lawyers actually willing to side with the with the girl who was pressing charges for assault and rape on him. And the lawyer was a Hindu, and that made a huge statement, because people thought that a Hindu would never go against a godman, and he told a story at the end of his in his closing arguments that really swung the case. And there's a film made about this as well, and almost verbatim the story has been retold in that film, which is how I know about it, which is, I think it's such a good example. So it's from Ramayana, and so Ravan was a huge, basically the opposing force to Lord Ram in Ramayana is Ravan, and he's not considered the most moral person. I mean, he's considered evil, in fact, in Hinduism, in this part of the world, in India, Sri Lanka, things are different. But so Ravan was a huge Shiv devotee, Lord Shiv. And when this entire thing was happening, when the war was going on and everything, Parvati, goddess Parvati, who's Lord Shiv's wife, sat next to him and said, he's your devotee. Why don't you save him? This is against your karma as a god, when he spent his entire life praying to you. So he said, I characterize crimes on 3 levels. So the first crime is a crime against a person. The second crime is a crime against community. And there's a third crime, which is crime against religion. And so Lord Goddess Parvati said that he's abducted Goddess Sita. He's done all this, so it's at best it's a crime against community. And he was of belief that he'd help his devotee in the first two levels of crimes, but not of the third. So Lord Parvati said, this falls within your scope. Why not help him? And he said, actually you're wrong. It's crime against religion, because he not only abducted her, he abducted her claiming to be a godman. He abducted her claiming to be a sant, which in English is like a priest. That now is going to have such a huge impact on Sanatan Dharma and on religion, that from now on people will think twice before believing in a priest. And that stayed with me, and that is such a good parallel to draw here, because making that claim does not always mean that the claim is made in honesty. And people fall for it. Goddess Sita fell for it, and look where that ended.
I think one reason why people have difficulty believing all the serious charges against some of these Godmen is that there is a belief in Indian society, belief in many other societies, and to some extent a little joke will capture it. So there is this trial in which a lot of evidence is presented, and somehow the judge is not in agreement with the evidence, and he dismisses the charges. And the lawyer on the other side sort of says, "My lord, where is the justice?" So the judge says, "My dear, this is a court of law, this is not a court of justice." So there is a belief in our societies that justice is reserved to be done by gods.
Yeah.
So if at all a godman is not a godman, that's a big if, people will hedge that if many times, then it is for God to punish him, and somehow earthly courts may not have the competence to do that.
Yeah.
So I won't be surprised if a godman is convicted by a court of law, and it still fails to persuade many of their followers that they had done something wrong. So because we separate, justice done in a court versus justice done by God.
Yeah. No, another thing is, another argument that people use very often is that, well, if gurus are teachers and they're teaching us, in Hinduism and in a lot of religion, teachers are given the same stature as God. In the sense that you're forever indebted to them, which is the truth. But I think it goes beyond that, because technically in Hinduism, no one can even claim to be a guru unless they've mastered the Vedas. And a lot of the gurus that we are talking about, the Godmen, the self-styled Godmen, have not picked up a single book in their life, let alone a book of religion. They're people who have made their own stories and have made their own ways of doing things. It's insane to me. Some of these Godmen are so people believe, it's called anbhakti in English. In English it would be blind faith. Basically, people have such huge amounts of blind faith. People give their money, their property, they buy property in the name of the Godmen. And these people are filthy rich people. It's actually quite opposed to how we think of as a priest or a Godman, someone living in a minimalist life, surviving on the bare minimum. But these people are living in 5 stars, flying in private jets. People don't see that.
So let me also come at it from a psychological perspective. One reason why people don't think of these people as bad, even if they're bad, to think of them as bad, or at least subject to scrutiny, is that thinking so would bring a lot of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is when you believe something to be true and suddenly a contrary fact comes to your notice. So that fact, the conflict of that fact with your belief, produces a state of anxiety, produces a state of mental unrest that's called cognitive dissonance. So that also prevents people. It's a kind of risk aversion, it's a kind of pain aversion, so that the belief system that has become established would continue to go on. Regarding the knowledge of scriptures by today's gurus, So what I see is that it's not that there are no, religious people in India or devout people in India who do not have knowledge of scripture, but I think that only a few of them are actually preaching to the masses.
Yeah.
A lot of them are actually maintaining that Guru Shishya tradition,
Yeah.
teaching them, passing it on in small groups,
Yeah.
but not doing it through mass media on television, bringing the full
I
force
think
of
one
social
of the
media.
people that I think has truly done that is Premanand Babaji, because he's gone to a very large extent not only to share knowledge on social media but also to live that minimalist lifestyle, to not accept any form of money, property from any people, and to openly say on social media that it is an absolute crime against religion, against humanity, for gurus, for these self-styled Godmen, to even call themselves Godmen, and to in fact say that they can cure things. There are people on social media sitting on a stage wearing tulsi malas, donning saffron, clothes, saying to masses of thousands and lakhs that come in a line, tell me your problem, I'll blow into the mic and it'll be gone. It's insane, and it's happening everywhere. It's all over social media, So there are people like Premanand Babaji who are saying, he's in kidney failure, he's been on dialysis for years, and he says, I want one of these godmen to come and fix me, So there are people like this, but there's the hold of someone who said, if someone comes to you and you're in a state of despair, in a state of in a very vulnerable place, and they say, actually, I'm not going to tell you how to solve the problem, I'm going to solve it for you, you will fall for it.
So I think, although we are talking about religion, but I like to step back and look at the larger picture. I mean, as a reader and a book collector, when I step into a bookshop, I find that 90% of the books are not worth picking up and flipping through. They're not worth my time. The same is true with excellence in any field.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe that an 80-20 or 90-10 principle applies to Godmen and Godwomen as well. So that is one. And the other thing is, I think people are looking for quick fixes. They're not looking for evidence of wisdom and learning.
Yeah.
So when they go, they know they're going to get 20 seconds. They're not going to spend those 20 seconds trying to interview the Godman about their qualifications to be able to say what they're saying.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of what they do, a lot of what they say has become self-promotional. They have become franchises.
Absolutely.
Right. So while they may not read, they are publishing prolifically.
Absolutely. And a lot of this is, it's written by ghostwriters, because these people can, speak one in English if there was a gun to their head. In fact, like you said about quick fixes, people go, if you were to go to a true religious person, anyone who's read, no matter which religion this is, they will tell you, this has happened, especially in Hinduism and Sikhism, I can say these. People go and say, my daughter has cancer, I have this and I have this, and true religious people actually look in the eye and say, unfortunately it's the truth, you have to accept it, this is your karma, you have to live it out, but people don't want that. No one wants to hear that. They'll go to people who say, okay, do this and do this on a Saturday and do this on a Friday and give me this much money and whatever you want, and it'll be fixed. That's what they want.
I think there are broadly two approaches to religious fixes, and that can be used as a ready test to distinguish a genuinely spiritual person from a fraudulent one. Like you said, the genuine one tries to change you, tries to enable you to deal better with a life situation. And the one who's not genuine will try to move in defiance of Newton's laws and Einstein's laws, the path of Jupiter, for example.
Yeah.
Or make you see something in the eclipse of a moon or eclipse of the sun. So they promise to change the universe for you. I think when you get that sort of a promise, that sort of, an assurance. So there's a saying that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Yeah.
And I see that evidence is lacking. Of course, there are always anecdotal cases, but we know that anecdotal cases do not an argument make. So that's a ready test, if you ask me.
You know, in Sikhism, so in the Guru Granth Sahib, it's mentioned in a lot of places that you are only a true Sikh if you can respect everyone. You should keep your ego low in front of everyone, but you should only bow your head in front of either the Guru Granth Sahib Ji or in front of Vaheguru Ji, who's supposed to be the ultimate supreme God. Bowing your head in front of anyone else or expecting someone to bow their head to you, whether that's a teacher, whether that's a parent, whether that's anyone, a godman, is against religion. And I believe that very strongly, is you need to have a certain sense of scrutiny that you need to do, and there needs to be some sense of accountability for the claims that are made and for the words that are spoken. That is just not there, because we have equated speaking against someone who claims to be connected to God to speaking against God themselves or speaking against religion, when in fact we're doing a great disservice in my mind. Which is why I'm doing this, because there are going to be people who are going to disagree with this, and there is going to be a lot of controversy, but at the end of the day, I'm going to try and stay true to what I believe in. And this is what I believe in, is that according to Hinduism, there's going to be one final avatar in Kali Yuga, and that's going to be Kalki, and we're still 5 lakh something years away from it. So anyone right now, whether it's a politician, this has become a huge thing, politicians, people right up there claiming to be God sent, claiming to not be biological, claiming to be an avatar, is not promotion of a particular religion. Rather, I think it's a huge disservice, and I'm glad people are sort of not falling for it, because these politicians are getting a backlash.
They are. I think, so one thing about Sikhism also is Sikh means learn.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to go on learning throughout your life. Now, so whether it was a Sikh gurus or great teachers of other religions, I think they realized that learning is not as straightforward as it seems. It is a tricky business. The reason is you have to lower the barriers to learning. That means you have to be able to accept something. At the same time, you are not expected to accept it unquestioningly.
Yes.
Because if you do, then you start slipping towards vulnerability, start slipping towards the ability of others to exploit you. So to keep a balance between the two, to keep yourself sublimated, to not believe that you know everything, that there's always room for improvement, that knowledge is a continuously increasing ocean, and one can only sample no more than a few drops of it. So I think that realization, coupled with the fact that no authority is ultimate.
Absolutely.
And you should not accept it unless you've tested it against reason, unless you've tested it against common sense, against humanity, that it should be accepted. So because it is such a difficult business, not everyone can become a learner, but many people think they can become gurus because they can take advantage of one side of that equation, the ability to accept without encouraging the ability to question.
Absolutely. And I think that is the biggest issue, that we as teachers, as godmen, as politicians, as parents, as older siblings, we expect to be the ultimate authority, without realizing that we ourselves have defied the so-called authority so many times in our lives. And these godmen who are claiming this and that, a lot of them have left their families. A lot of them have denounced the responsibility they had towards their parents, towards their ailing relatives. And they are going on a stage telling people to do what they have not been able to do in their entire lives. And I think that's unfair, on a lot.
I agree with you, but I think unfortunately people collectively are set up to kind of believe more than not believe, because you must have learned about this argument from authority, and people accept an authority figure to know more than the average person. I mean, it's not seen just in the spiritual field. You often see interviews of film stars talking on scientific matters. You may try to enroll a Nobel laureate to speak on religious matters.
Yeah.
So these are all misapplications of argument from authority. And in spiritual matters, it goes to an extreme, because there the authority extends in principle to everything and anything
everyone, yeah.
and everyone.
Yeah, and I think so. I basically felt the need to do this episode on this, because this whole thing happened and I cancelled my previous episode. The next episodes are not going to be on this. This is more or less an explanation for what I said, and thanks to Dad for joining. It was very nice. I dragged him into this for no reason, but I'm glad you I hope you like it, and I'm glad he joined.
The pleasure is mine.
And we will try to be a little bit more consistent, because Sid and I we're sitting in different parts of the world. It's becoming a little tough to kind of arrange stuff, and so on and so forth. We're traveling, we're meeting families.
Sil's shows are really big to film.
Indeed, very big. She's been doing pop culture, which has been going great. So yeah, you'll have this in a couple of hours, and I really hope you like it. Please drop comments. Feel free to challenge this. Like we said, I think that's how you have conversations, you have dialogues. You don't have to accept something blindly. I have simply put through my perspective, and I hope you enjoyed it. And a couple of episodes by me will be bearing with to the modern day world and drawing parallels. So thank you so much for watching this episode. Like, share, subscribe, and please comment. Thank you so much.
And thank you for suffering me. It was a pleasure.
It was great. Bye.